So our next speaker, next up is Judith Austin Mills. She has Austin in her name and her books have Austin in them, right and left. She is the author of Accidental Joy, A Streak of Poetry, which is 101 songs of poetry. And she grew up, she's also the author of How Far Tomorrow and Those Bones of Goliath. And these are two Texas Revolution novels. So Judith grew up surrounded by music and literature, which she says makes rhythm and rhyme natural friends in her poetry. She earned 2 degrees in English from UT, and with a creative writing concentration, she's been writing fiction and poetry ever since. After years of teaching college English, including English in the French classroom, she is currently an adjunct associate professor of English at Austin Community College. So in 2001, her first manuscript, Tripping Home, won a Writers League of Texas competition, and she first published the historical novel, How Far Tomorrow, in 2011. And then her recent novel, Those Bones of Goliath, is the sequel, and it just came out a couple of weeks ago. And in between the two, she just had to put out a book of poetry last year. So tonight she is going to read, this is called Accidental Joy, A Streak of Poetry, and she's going to be streaking across the stage with songs of accidental joy.
So people are talking about shoes, and I just have to tell you that several family members say to me off and on, up, because you're not going to see much. If you look at the shoes, I think I started off with the corrective shoes to keep me from being not neat. So when everybody else was wearing penny loafers, no, I had the lace-up saddle Oxfords. When everybody here in 1968 in Austin buying Papagallos, I'm so glad you said the word hippie, but I brought my hush puppies with me, but I ended up going barefoot so much of the time, and I tell you, I cannot stand here on the corner of Guadalupe and 29th Street and Rio Grande without picturing myself. Maybe some nights I would have known whether I had my shoes on, some kind of shoes or not. Other nights, not so much. But, you know, I come down here from far, far away, Pflugerville, and I can go right back to 1968. And I am going to ask you to time travel just briefly with me today. I have one poem from Accidental Joy, and I'm going to jump right to a short paragraph from these 2 historical novels. Other people who know me say, historical novels? When did you ever get interested in history? Maybe from the point of time at which I realized I've got to look back almost 1/2 a century in order to remember myself on these streets. So this is a very familiar spot on the planet to me, a very familiar grid, but boy has the scenery changed. I'm just a gawking, you know, look at those condos. So let me read a poem, in fact, that I've never read in public, a book of 101 freewheeling, free verse poems, I would say. Some of them come across as songs of a spiritual nature, some are more social criticism, some are wry humor, at least my attempt at it, and others have that memorabilia, my family, my own experience. So here's a little self-indulgence, just one poem from Accidental Joy. Think of me out there. Didn't matter what time of night it was, barefoot. I got my degree in 3.5 years, so I didn't drop out of society. I was pretty responsible, and yet this rings a bell. All night ride. While I say nostalgia is a sin, I will still reach past. I will always wander in where my heart thump commanded more than current faint thrums. In my very weakest moments, I would trade most any now for those surreal drums, like the night my floppy hat got left behind at a curving booth in the college commons. And though I hurried back to search the fair, such shades and heads in every shape were everywhere that if my felt chapeau still lay in sight, I did not care that I did not care. If the soft brown thing had stretched itself into yet something else, even farther out, atop the as long as loosened hair of another virtually bare-breast girl, her own green gathered skirt brushing the gently bending floor, gliding her way out an imagined door to a glowing rainbow flower box van, pulling off at an overlook on the edge of town, while French coffee drips from a paper towel filter, and over the radio an electric pulse throbs from a solo needle digging vinyl before the all-night ride to Santa Fe, where an ocean of smoke swirls above a peacock stage, makes a give it to me sea surge to sweep the 50s from their sock-hop feet and their skittish piety, washing way off and warding away 3 benign decades through the not now 90s. For another 30 years, I might believe she was never me, but oh, was I ever there. Sock hop feet, did you get it? Okay, that's it. That's my segue from shoes, okay. Well, history to me meant go back to 1950. History started the year you were born, and you know, that's all there is to it. You can take in your parents and maybe grandparents, but no further back than that. But I had made so many trips with French students to the French legation, and I had to wonder, my God, in this palace on a hill with everything else down below in the streets of Austin, this looking exterior, at best, log cabins, what in the world could people down below in 1839 and 40 have thought of a French chateau going up on that hill? And so that began connecting with the idea of, wait a minute, the people down below doubtless had some relatives somehow connected to what happened at the Alamo, and wait a minute, I have an ancestor, wait a minute, too, on the monument at Goliad. I wonder how I could be this old, 55, 60, and not have thought about who were those people. Just thought the guy got on his horse and sidled his way over here from wherever and ended up in Texas. And the first thing I found out is 180 years ago tonight, people in Macon, Georgia were holding candles. That's 1,000 miles from here. Not just my ancestral uncle or his first cousin, but 75, and then 75 in Montgomery, Alabama, and 70, found their way 1,000 miles away to Texas. And we know that where we are right now used to be just a little settlement, Waterloo down by, I'm going to read just one paragraph here, of the 50 ox carts it took to bring the archives of Houston, when it was the capital, to the new capital. No, Mirabeau Lamar wanted it to be here. So here's just a paragraph of what I try to visualize people in 1839 and 1840, just like I can visualize myself walking down Rio Grande Street barefooted. What were the real people like when they lived here? And that remarkable event, 50 ox carts. One little paragraph. The first 10 carts rolled along as far as the stockade perimeter of the government building, and the next 10 went past that line, think of Congress, up Congress to where a dome building was only a fantasy. The next 25 carts had to pull up alongside in the middle of the street, and the last half dozen didn't make it up from the river until close to sundown. Wagon drivers laughed and cursed and bragged. Bellowing oxen contributed to the tumult as officials from the Capitol building came out and checked off what was being carried. The pungent smell of oxen dung wafting through the streets did not deter Mr. Bullock's smelly pigs from investigating the scene. Squealing with excitement, they angled back and forth through the bizarre assembly of visitors and buzzing horseflies. Well, that was my first novel, How Far Tomorrow, about the forgotten people at Goliad. And then I thought, wait a minute. No, it's not just happened on this date, and who won, who lost, was Fannin right, was Houston right? No, real people. So let me just read about 3 paragraphs. It's a conversation between, maybe you've seen the statue of Angelina Everly on Congress and 6th Street. She, in cast iron, she is firing that cannon. And that's a great moment. You know, I like to think about that, but I wanted to think about, well, what was going on in her life in the days and weeks leading up to that? What was she like? What did she go through? She'd gone down Natchez, crossing paths with one of the youngest people lost at Goliad. And she's talking here to, she's lost her second husband, and she's talking to just friends. Imagine that even in those days, there were not many women in Austin at the time compared to the number of men. But a 27-year-old man could be just simply friends with about a 40-year-old woman who ran the hotel, as Angelina Everly did. Later in the week, Angelina found an opportunity to call Shelby aside out on her porch. She was a striking, dark-haired woman. He and any man would have agreed, but Shelby had noticed something else about her when she was on her own. Shelby Whitmire, I'm going to tell you and no other soul. Anything, it'll go no further. Of that I am sure. They stood looking across to Bullock's pig pens and listening for any foot traffic coming from the other direction of the hotel or the Count's lodgings. Even when you were a boy, and when you said you'd keep Texas a secret, I knew you would. I was sure my Jonathan and I wouldn't be followed here because of anything you ever told. I never did. Of course not. Well, what I'm telling you now is that I'm done with marrying. With my luck, it ends in tragedy, for one thing. That hasn't been very long that the captain's been buried. That's true, Angelina said, but here's Rebecca McIntyre. Her first husband cut down at Goliad, her second drowned only a short time after vows. Shelby goes on to say, you managed so much on your own, Angelina. And here's the part I think of as she's discovering something about herself. It takes too much out of me after I soften to dredge back up the single-minded person I used to take hold of the reins again. And you know what else, Shelby? A half-grown pig broke out of the Bullock pen and trotted toward them. You know what else? When I finally get full power in my brain and shoulders again, I've seen it. He's agreed already. I know what you're going to say. She looked directly at him and nodded as if to indicate that was why she was speaking her mind to him. I feel like myself when I'm on my own. It's only when I have the whole weight of survival and happiness, every burden resting on my own shoulders and every blessed joy coming direct from my own efforts, that she made a gesture that sent the pig running. I feel like myself.